Today on Grid Girls, we'll discuss Hailie Deegan's move to the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series in 2021. Hamda Al Qubaisi had a weekend. We'll describe her weekend and preview the upcoming race weekend of all the women racing around the world for a win right here on Grid Girls. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Girls, the women racing to win. With me, Daniel from Racers, the girls behind the helmet. My name is Joe from the Grid Network. We have a lot to report, including Daniel's trip to Monza, where he saw Jamie Chadwick and Hamda race this past weekend at the Temple of Speed.
Absolutely. I was, as you said, in Monza for the second weekend in a row after the previous ELMS round 2 weeks ago. The Formula 3 European Championship was racing there with Jamie Chadwick on the grid, and also the Italian Formula 4 Championship, which is most of the times it's a support series to the Formula 3 regional, was in Monza for the fifth round of their season with Hamda Al Qubaisi back on track. Hamda is one of the we often speak about her. She's one of the most interesting Formula 4 drivers racing worldwide. She's having a pretty interesting season. It's her first full season in Formula cars. She did 2 races last year in the Italian Formula 4 Championship towards the end of the season, namely in the Red Bull Ring and Monza. Last year, she was racing together with her sister Amna, who was also in her second season in Italian Formula 4 with Abu Dhabi Racing by Prema. This year, Amda has been doing her first season full time in the Italian Formula 4 Championship, while Amna has taken a stop year, has had a stoppage this year. Hamda did the Emirati-based Formula 4 Championship in the winter, which was one of the few championships that got underway during the winter, and she had an amazing season there. It was her first full-time season in car racing. And she dominated qualifying sessions. She had a lot of pole positions and won races, and she fought for the championship. So it was under the spotlight when she switched to the Italian Formula 4 Championship when it started in July. As we previously mentioned, the Italian Formula 4 Championship is one of the most competitive series around Europe. Probably the most competitive Formula 4 Championship worldwide, together with the German Formula 4 Championship. And Hamda saw in a very competitive grid, in a very crowded grid of over 30 cars. It was very interesting to see how she could do. And actually, she's doing very well. She has had her first top 10 earlier at the Red Bull Ring, and in Monza, which was the other racetrack that she already knew from last year's round that she did. It was obviously it was interesting to see how she could do in Monza. In Mugello, the previous round, she had quite a rough weekend because it was raining in Mugello, and as she told us, it's not a weather condition that she knows too well in a race car, as in the Emirati. Of course, it's not a very common weather condition. So when the rain was again forecasted for Monza, it was a little bit worrying for her. Coming into at the Temple of Speed, at what is probably one of the most famous racetrack around the world. But luckily, after the first practice session, where she was again, I think P21 or P22 under the rain, luckily the weather improved, so the sun came out, and as soon as the sun came out, as soon as the track dried up, it was immediately clear that Hamda was in the mix for another very interesting result in Monza. In the second free practice session, she was always in the top 10, and she was in P7 with 5 minutes to go. Then a red flag came out, and she dropped to 8th place, which was an amazing result for her, because it was immediately clear that she had the pace to be up there and fighting for points again. In qualifying, actually, we can hear her speaking about qualifying before.
Yeah, I think Q1 went well. I just had a lock up in the last sector, and I could have been a P6 easily, but I messed up. With all of this chaotic things happening and the red flags and the full course yellow, to get one, you only have one lap. So if you mess that lap up, you mess up everything. But P12 was good, and then Q2 again, there was red flag, full course yellow. I barely got a lap in, and the lap I wanted to get in, I was in first gear on the clutch in the Parabolica, and as soon as it turned green, I didn't even have time to react to that. So again, a mistake by me, but I'll learn from it and do better for the race one. So race one starting P12, that's the best qualifying I've did so far. So I'll look at that as a positive. I know I can do better. So I mean, I showed yesterday P8 without even slipstream, nothing. So yeah, I think I just messed up a bit of the chance I had to do a P6 top 5 maybe. But it's okay. We have race one soon. I think what I need to do is just not get through the first corner, basically, because so with all these drivers and the chicane, the first corner might be a mess. So get out alive, I would say, and then with the car, and yeah, make sure I keep the pace. I know I have the pace, so I'll try to catch and make positions. Maybe again with a top 10 finish, hopefully.
Yep, and as you heard, she was pretty happy about the P12. It was her first, it was her best qualifying result ever in the series. But still, when you're not that satisfied by a P12, it means that you're really in the mix for a good result. In qualifying, she had quite a couple of troubles for red flags, for neutralization and full course yellows, with drivers going off the track and beaching in their cars in the gravel. And she could have been higher up the order, maybe in a top 6. She said easily a top 6. After the Q1, she was P12, which was the result that did the grid for the race one. And then in the Q2, she had, as she mentioned, she had a mistake into coming into Parabolica. I mean, all the drivers trying to find the slipstream and to usual Monza qualifying, we would say. She couldn't complete a full lap how she wanted, and she was again down the order. But it was very interesting because with P12 it was her best qualifying in the series, and so it was very interesting to see race one starting from a very good position. As she said, Monza is always very tricky in coming to the first chicane. Hamda had a very good start. But coming to the first chicane, she had she was in the huge traffic there, and she decided to straight line the first chicane. That was quite a mistake from her. She rejoined, dropping a couple of some positions after the first lap, and then again she had a mistake coming to the Ascari chicane. She went into the grass there. She rejoined on dirty tires. So after the first lap, really she dropped to P18, I think. So it wasn't a very good first lap for her. But the major problem came at the third lap, when she was actually trying to recover a little bit. She had found again some pace, because she had definitely had the pace to be in the top 10, and she showed that throughout the whole weekend. In the third lap, another driver, Wisnicki, actually crashed into her from behind, and it was a huge crash. Her opponent basically jumped over her car and landed a few inches from the cockpit. the wing mirror, the left wing mirror was damaged, and I saw that. I was right there into the pit lane when she came back, because she actually could come back to the pit lane after the crash, and I have no idea how she was not hurt from that, luckily. But really, the car was really damaged. There was no more the engine cover, which was taken off and flew off after the crash. The wing mirror was off. There was the antenna in front of her cockpit was down. So I mean, she had literally the front wing beside her over the other driver. So it was very scary crash, definitely. Highlights the importance of the halo device on all Formula cars. These Formula 4 cars do not have the halo because they were supposed to change the chassis, the cars this year. But of course, after all the with the pandemic, with all the financial troubles that some of the teams had, they could not afford to change all the cars this year. So it will definitely be on the agenda for the next couple of years. Because crashes like that really highlights the importance of the halo device. Hamda climbed up of the car quite in a shock, I would say, completely understandable. But she was perfectly fine. The car was fixed in time for the race 2, and we can hear her speaking about the first race and the accident.
Yeah, so my start was not so bad. I made 2 positions in the straights, but then I decided to go straight instead of taking the chicane, and I think that was my first mistake, I guess, of the race. And then I lost so many positions. Then I tried to make it up, and again, another mistake by me. It caused me to go really wide in one of the corners, and when I rejoined the track, I had a bunch of cars behind me, but they were catching me in the straights because the Monza here, you know, the straights. And then one guy from behind, under braking, just completely, maybe he forgot to brake, I don't know, but completely drove over me. I saw his front wing on my front, on my front mirror, on my front left mirror. I was like, whoa. And then my whole, I was losing speed in the straights. I tried to continue, but I was losing a lot of speed in the straights, and I couldn't catch the others. But again, I guess it's just one of those bad races, and put it behind me and focus on the next race.
I think from this race, the most important thing is that you are okay.
Yeah, that's
because
true.
you know that was very dangerous.
Yeah.
There's nothing else that matters.
Yeah, true.
Apart that you're
Exactly.
okay. So, yeah.
I mean, so far we did the best quality so far, so I was happy about that. But then to not end it with a good result is a bit disappointing, because I knew I had the pace to be up there. So, but it's okay, it happens, and we'll focus on race 2 and 3.
Absolutely.
Race 2, I'll start at the back a bit further this time, but I guess it's maybe safer than the mid pack. So, then we'll focus on making positions.
Yeah.
And then,
race 3, you start P11, I think.
Yes, race 3, I'll start in a good position again, and this time I'll make the right decisions, let's say, and also make sure I don't do anything crazy.
Yep, that was Hamda after the first race, after her accident, a scary accident in race 1. She started P24 in the second race. It was obviously always going to be a very difficult race from her, starting that back from in the grid in such a competitive field. But she could move up the order. As I said, she definitely had the pace for a top 10. So she made a couple of moves, of good moves, and recovered some positions. Unfortunately, towards the end of the race, when she was, I think, P16, so she had made some good moves and good positions up. She had another mistake into the first chicane. and she jumped over the high curbs, the sausage curbs that we always see in Formula One, and the car basically bounced back on track and into the side of another driver, Chen Yuhan, the Chinese Van Amersfoort Racing driver. Unfortunately, it was the end of the race for both drivers. Hamda had some damages to her front suspension and to the front wing. After that, it was nothing at major speed. Of course, it was just into the first chicane. The car just bounced over the curbs, but it was enough to take them both out of the race. So a very, very difficult first couple of races for Hamda in Monza, despite her pace and despite her potential. But as we heard her saying, she was starting P11 from the race 3, which was the best starting position that she had so far into the series. And she just said to us, I just want to have fun and to finish the race. And so she had a very good race. She stayed there into top 10, P11, P10. At one point, she was P9, then went up to P8, then back to P8, P9. It was a crazy race. There were very, very spectacular races in the top 3 positions, all 3 races. They were dominated by Italian drivers, Francesco Pizzi, Rosso, and Gabriele Mini. Very interesting upcoming Italian drivers. They dominated the whole weekend with even some finishes at the photo finish. Especially race 1, which was then assigned to Pizzi, sorry, after a penalty for Mini. All 3 races were absolutely spectacular in Monza with the usual Monza slipstream. And Hamda stayed there. She made no mistakes whatsoever. There were some drivers that made mistakes. She was quick to jump on the opportunity. She finished in P9, which was another point scoring position for her second this year after the Red Bull Ring. P9, it's also the best result for her in Italian Formula 4, and the best result for a woman in Italian Formula 4, which was a really massive result for her. She was super happy about that, understandably. And she really comes into the final 2 race weekends in Imola and in Vallelunga, trying again to break into the top 10 after this impressive result in Monza. It was impressive not only for the result, but also for the pace, because she could have finished all weekend. She had the pace to be there, to be in top 6, 7. So really, it's interesting to see her finishing her first rookie season in one of the most competitive racing series in the world. And we can hear about from her after race 3.
Took so long. Race 1 horrible, race 2 even worse, and then finally race 3. I told myself to just have fun, do the best I can, and have fun. And then finally with the P9, my first P9, best result now so far. Oh, that was so emotional, especially to the last lap. That was crazy. I had one guy right behind me, like.
Yeah.
So then the last lap after the restart was very, very crazy. But it was really good. I would like to thank the team for everything, and my sponsors, Strata and Abu Dhabi Racing, Kaspersky. They honestly amazing result. I think this will go down in history. It's really amazing.
And yes, that was the roundup of the Italian Formula 4 round at Monza, with Hamda Al Qubaisi again doing a fantastic job there. I think you will be speaking about the NASCAR, which was a really interesting double weekend.
Very interesting weekend for Hamda. I know a lot of times start off with a couple poor races, but then come back and the weekend on such a high note. You could just hear the excitement on her voice. Really exciting stuff. Over here in the United States, NASCAR, some of the big news that came up about an upcoming driver, Hailie Deegan. Of course, Hailie Deegan on Saturday afternoon participated in her first Gander RV and Outdoor Truck Series race at Kansas Speedway, a tricky 1.5-mile oval Now, during the race, Ford Performance announced that she'll be in the Truck Series full time in 2021 with DGR Crosley Racing. That is the team currently fielding for her in the Kansas race. Now, Deegan had progressed the entire race and worked her way through the field, starting from the back. Of course, no qualifying, no practice, had to start in the back. Did fall a lap down, but still came home a respective finish of 16th place in her debut race, not putting a wheel wrong anywhere, really. Now, for the ARCA Menard Series, she finished third behind the series champion Fred Holm and runner-up Michael Self. So overall, good season for Hailie Deegan in the ARCA Menard Series, and definitely she has to be excited as she goes to the NASCAR Truck Series, which next year is renamed to the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series. Also racing, of course, along with Hailie Deegan was Jennifer Jo Cobb. Jennifer Jo Cobb running at Kansas. She started 29th, finished 29th place after starting 27th. The truck just wasn't seem to be handling that well throughout the race. Kansas Speedway is a very tricky track when it comes to handling it. We even saw some of that in the Cup Series race on Sunday, where handling was an issue, despite even having cooler temperatures. Overall, a chilly weekend at Kansas. Now, Jennifer Jo Cobb will be racing at Texas Motor Speedway. She'll be starting 31st. Again, no practice, no qualifying. So that unfortunate finish of 29th hinder any opportunities to start a little higher up. Texas is a 1.5 mile oval, but each turn has different banking. So turn 1, turn 2, a little less banking compared to turn 3 and turn 4. So again, this is going to be another track where handling will be a big issue for all the drivers, trying to have a good setup once you get the truck loaded from the transporter onto the racetrack. That is the only time all these drivers are getting any opportunity to essentially set up the vehicle is during the race. So it's definitely going to be a big challenge for Jennifer Jo Cobb and all the NASCAR Truck Series racers this upcoming weekend. I know definitely we're going to be really looking forward to that. And of course, we had Formula Regionals over at Monza.
Yeah, definitely. As we said before, the Formula Regional European Championship is racing this year together with the Italian Formula 4. They're both organized by the ACI promoter in Italy. And of course, after this season where traveling around the world is not that easy, they decided to do a lot of races this year in Italy. So after Misano, Mugello, they are racing again in Italy 2 more times. Of course, there was Monza, and they're going to be Imola, and then Vallelunga. But before Imola, there's going to be a round in Barcelona in 2 weeks' time. So a very interesting championship. The Formula Regional European Championship is one of the highly paying championship in terms of super license points, FIA super license points. The winner gets 25 super license points, which is a lot for a potential Formula One candidate. Last year it attracted a lot of very, very important junior talents from Europe trying to get into Formula One. Frederick Vesti won the championship for Prema. Prema really dominated the series last year with 1, 2, 3 pretty much every race. There was Sophia Flörsch racing in the Formula Regional European Championship last year for Van Amersfoort Racing, her historic team, her Dutch team, where she had previously raced also in the European Formula 3 Championship. She finished in a very promising 7th place, Sophia, last year. And so it was interesting to see Jamie, how she could do after winning the W Series, the inaugural W Series title last year, and also doing very, very well in the Formula 3 Asian Series in the winter. Jamie had a super winter this year, and she was winning races in the Asian Formula 3 Championship, where there were very interesting drivers as well, with Nikita Mazepin, for example, who is now strongly hinted for a Formula 1 seat next year. So definitely it was a positive season for Jamie. She definitely can drive those cars. All these championships are employing the Tatuus Formula 3 chassis, the T318 chassis. And so definitely she knows how to drive those cars. But this year she had a pretty tough season in the Formula 3 European Championship, in the regional championship. After a podium in the Misano opening round and a P5 in Austria, the Red Bull Ring, she has not been able really to get into the positions where she belongs, maybe top 5, top 6. And again in Monza, she had quite a challenging weekend again. In the rain again after Mugello, where she had a very challenging weekend. In Monza again in the rain, she wasn't that competitive, but luckily, as she said, it was going to be a not that important session, because of course there was the forecast for the sun coming up straight after the first practice session. So not many drivers pushed a lot in the first practice, apart from Nico Göller, which was substituting Yuri Vips, who is a driver in the Red Bull Junior Academy, and who is going to be one of the contenders for the Alpha Tauri Formula 1 seat very soon. He was obviously racing in the Formula Regional European Championship to try to maximize his super license points, and he's also racing in the Japanese Super Formula Championship. And this weekend he was not in Monza, because he went to Japan trying to race in the Super Formula race. He was not cleared to race in Japan because of the quarantine regulations. He had to isolate for 14 days in the hotel. So basically he missed both the Formula Regional European Championship race in Monza and the Japanese Super Formula race at Sugo. So there was Nico Göller subbing in for Vips at KIC Motorsport in Monza, and Göller, who is a very young 16-year-old German driver, he went a little bit over the edge in first practice under the rain, and he crashed the car and did a lot of damage to his car, and could not take part in qualifying. But apart from that, all the other drivers were pretty cautious into the first practice session, because of course the sun came out. It did come out into the second practice session, and Jamie was actually very promising into the second practice session on Friday. She was P7, which was good, mainly because the gaps were very close. The whole field was very tight. From the first driver, Oliver Rasmussen, Patrick Pasma, Jamie was like 6 or 7 tenths adrift. So it was very promising for her, because the gaps were not that big, and she was in the mix for a top 6. And coming into qualifying, though, on Saturday morning, it was sunny but quite chilly, very cold Saturday morning in Monza. She couldn't find the pace that she had on the day before. She was P10 in both Q1 and Q2, and she was not happy about it. She really didn't understand what she was missing and why she dropped that pace that she had on Friday. We have a small audio clip from after qualifying when she spoke to us.
Yeah, difficult start to the weekend. We showed quite good pace in practice. Was actually really happy with the car, everything. Then just in qualifying, quite a messy session. Tried a bit too hard to find a toe and then missed out on the toe eventually. And I think around here you can never get it perfect. So just didn't really put it together at all. But I think I'm still confident off the back of yesterday, and think we can have a strong race.
Yeah, she was confident, as she said, for race 1 and the race 2. Starting from P10, it was quite difficult for her to recover some position, but she was in the mix. She had quite some pace, so she did try to move up the order. Unfortunately, she was out of the race. actually, sorry, she was P9 in the first race. She moved up one position. It was a decent first session for her, first race for her. But in the second race, she was out for an accident with Göhler, with Nico Göhler, the driver, the rookie driver that I mentioned before, coming into the second chicane into Lesmo 1. She was crashed out. Göhler straight drove into her side, and they were both out with quite a lot of damage, actually. Also in the first race, she was 8th at one point, but then she was spun around by Pierre-Louis Chauvet into the second chicane. She could finish the race. She was just spun around, but she obviously was back into the last place, and she had again to move up some positions. She managed to finish P9. But again, the second race, she unfortunately had that crash. The Prema guys worked very hard to fix the car in time for the third race, because the second and the third race are both on Sunday in the Formula Regional European Championship. For example, the KIC Motorsport guys for Göhler could not send the German driver back out on track for the third race, while the Prema mechanics and engineers did a fantastic job to send Jamie back out for the third race. She had quite a better third race. She was P8, again from P10. Which was okay, kind of okay. She had a penalty, though, at the start. As usual, there was quite some messy action coming into the first chicane. There were 3 drivers going side by side, and they made contact, wheel to wheel. It was wheel to wheel contact, nothing major. But unfortunately, Jamie was penalized for that. The race direction deemed her guilty for the incident, which I don't think it was a big deal, but still, she had a 5-second penalty into the race. So basically, she focused on building a gap on Cola, who was behind, to maintain 8th place. It was another quite messy race and chaotic race up in front with the actually there was Patrick Pasma from KIC Motorsport who won all the races, breaking a 13 race domination from Prema. Pasma won all the 3 races, but he was penalized after the second race. So the second race victory went to Oliver Rasmussen from Prema. In the third race, there was some more messy action for Arthur Leclerc, who all weekend banged wheels with Petekov, another driver from the Prema team, who is also the championship contender with Leclerc. So there was full action in the championship fight between Leclerc and Petekov. Pasma won again the third race. Leclerc had some problems, and he had front wing damage, and he dropped back. So there was a huge battle between towards the end between Leclerc, Emilio Pesce, and Jamie Chadwick. Jamie, in the third race, finally had again her pace, showed again her competitive pace. She could have been higher up, probably 6th or 7th, but she could not make the moves stick into the chicanes. And Leclerc finished 6th, Pesce 7th, and Jamie 8th, all very much together across the finish line. Jamie, of course, had the 5-second penalty, but she could build a over 9-second gap on Cola, so she was classified 8th, which is pretty okay after such a difficult qualifying for her. She will come into the Barcelona weekend with a little of hope maybe doing a little bit better and going into the top 6, which I think is something that she can do. We don't have other audio recordings from her after the race sessions, unfortunately, but we'll try to get more content from you from Barcelona for the next round.
Barcelona. That's going to be a really good opportunity for her to rebound. Of course, Barcelona track, one of the better tracks in the world, along with Monza, of course. Barcelona, a little bit more different. Monza, you don't have the speed to worry about, but definitely it's a great opportunity for Jamie Chadwick. Speak about great opportunities. The FIA Rising Star, of course, last week we first reported on how it was getting started. At the end, there is an opportunity for someone to go to the Ferrari Driver Academy. With the FIA Rising Star program continuing on, now it has dropped from 12 down to essentially 8 drivers eligible. Of course, 8 female drivers competing for this opportunity with Ferrari and the drivers program. Is a huge deal, but what makes it really significant in the coming months ahead, the 8 drivers are going to switch from karts, essentially the karting tracks that we see, the little go-karts, to Formula 4 vehicles, which is going to be a great opportunity for all these drivers. For all our viewers out there, Daniel, can you tell us what are some of the challenges a driver face when they go from a kart to a Formula 4 vehicle?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and this is something that we always, very often speak with drivers when we get the opportunity to interview or to chat with some drivers that recently made the jump from go-karts to Formula 4, which is the first competitive steps into Formula cars. Of course, the basics are pretty much very important. It's very important to get the basics in karting. You get all the regulations, all the techniques, the basic techniques, and also the side-by-side fighting, the battles. I think the battles are the most important thing to master when you're racing in karting, because that's really where you develop your racecraft in battles. We recently spoke with Veronika Zicha, Veronika Jausch, as she's now called after her marriage. She didn't get the chance to start in motorsport in karts. So when she said that she had the opportunity to go alongside some of the W Series drivers last year, which are all very young drivers that are starting in Formula cars, they're racing in Formula 3 cars now. She basically said that it was basically impossible for her to compete with them because she didn't have the karting experience. So we can understand, we can grasp how important it is to get the basics out of karting, the racecraft out of karting. It's very competitive in Europe. There is some of the most important championships going around in Europe. But also there are more challenges because there is not just very, very easy to switch from a kart to a Formula 4 car. We spoke, for example, with Marta Garcia, who is racing in W Series, and I quote, she said, "It's difficult to understand how to use your karting experience because it's very different and you have to adapt to the car." This is what Marta said. Nerea Martí, also last year, she did the Spanish Formula 4 Championship, and this year she was supposed to do W Series, told us, it's a lot different, for example, the braking technique, but I'm working hard with my team to solve it. So there are some differences. The braking technique is something that a lot of drivers mentioned, so definitely something interesting. And also Jessica Bachmann, who didn't do Formula cars, but it has switched straight to touring cars. She's doing, of course, the TCR Europe this year. She was quite a big name into karting, into European and Swedish karting. And she said, it was very difficult because when I drove in cars, I always drove without gears. It was all about braking and acceleration. But when I switched to racing cars, the first I had to learn how to change gears and doing it at the right time. So it's interesting to learn from them the different challenges that they're doing when switching from cars to Formula cars. And one of the most interesting that I can mention is Sabre Cook, of course, the American driver, also racing in W Series last year. She's also an engineer, so she also has that in engineering knowledge. And she said, honestly, for me, it's been quite difficult. I'm quoting what she said to us last year. You know, when karting, I was able to practice a lot more, and I have a kart track at home that my dad runs. So I was able to get a lot of seat time and whenever I wanted. Obviously, there's a lot more dynamics going on in the car, in Formula cars. So transitioning to that, I feel like I'm doing okay, but I definitely had to reach out to people that know what they're doing to increase my learning curve as quickly as possible to perform here as in W Series, and I have another series that I've been doing. So we can understand that, of course, there's a lot of dynamics, a lot of engineering into it, but the basics, it's pretty important to get the basics out in karting. Seat time is the most important thing, and you can get a lot more seat time in karting because of financial reasons. Of course, it's a lot more expensive to get testing in Formula 4. Also, Lina Buller, who was racing in the Spanish Formula 4 this year, she said to us when she was a huge name in European karting. She also did the World Championship in karting, and she told us, I have carried out several tests from the mid-season last year in single-seaters with several teams and different circuits. All that because she was trying to transition smoothly from cars to Formula cars. So the seat time is the most important thing, I would say. And then, as some of them also mentioned, braking techniques, there are some differences. It's a little bit tricky at the beginning, but once you've got your racecraft sorted in karting, definitely Formula cars are going to be something that comes a lot more natural. There are also karting drivers that we spoke to. On the other hand, they had very easy switch to Formula cars. For example, Sandra Gomez, who is a Spanish driver that is trying to get into Formula cars this year. She has been racing cars in the previous seasons. She had the opportunity last year to test a Formula 3 car, straight into Formula 3 car after a program that she did in Spain. And she said, I felt a special connection with the car. I love single seaters. I felt that we were one, the car and I. Every lap I felt faster and faster. So she had no problems, and it was a very natural switch from her. But it's not like that from everyone. But again, it's going to be interesting to see the 8 drivers that are making the switch from karting to Formula 4 cars in the FIA Women in Motorsports program in the coming month. The next training camp is going to be from 2 to 4 of November at Paul Ricard, and from the 8 selected drivers, only 4 will get to the third stage. And there are actually 2 drivers that did not compete in the first stage, which are Dorian Pin, French driver, 16-year-old from France, and Juju Noda, the 14-year-old driver from Japan. They got the chance to jump straight into the second stage because they were already racing in cars this year, so they did not compete in the karting selections. So from the 8 drivers that have now been selected, only 4 will get to the third stage in a few weeks' time, because from the 2 to 4th of November at Paul Ricard again.
Yeah, it's really something else. And one of the interesting things you point out is when in the kart level they're learning, they're battling their technique. That's really something you see, especially in the United States, where a lot of times folks start at the local short tracks, usually with older stock cars, but definitely you're learning the same skills, including your driving style and where you go from there. Definitely wishing all the women in the FIA Rising Star the best of luck. I know it's very competitive, but we're definitely supporting all of them, and definitely to the best racer out there, make the best one win. Of course, we got a big upcoming race weekend all over the globe, including Formula 4 racing, with British and the Danish having a big significant update starting up.
Yep, there's a big weekend coming up in the UK at Snetterton. The BTCC, the British Touring Car Championship, will be racing there, and there's the W Series racer Jessica Hawkins making her debut in the Vauxhall Astra in BTCC. So another pretty interesting race coming up from the UK, and also racing at Snetterton in the support series. There are also going to be the Porsche Carrera Cup UK, where Esme Hockey will be back behind the wheel of her Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car. She has been winning 9 races out of the 12 scheduled this year, so definitely Esme going for that championship. We'll keep an eye out on Esme at Snetterton, but as you mentioned, also the British Formula 4 race championship will be racing at Snetterton with Abby Pulling and Rima Jufali back on track in the British-based Formula 4 Championship. Abby has been doing a fantastic season this year. She has, in the previous round, she got a podium. It was her second podium. I think the first victory is really approaching. She's really going closer and closer to that first victory, and to get that into her first season in single-seaters or in car racing in general, straight from karting. It's going to be a massive achievement from Abby. Abby is coached by W Series race winner Alice Powell. So again, she has quite a advices from a very good driver, quite a good an important name in female motorsports. And also, as you mentioned, the Danish Formula 4 Championship it was scheduled to run this weekend, also the previous weekend and this weekend. Both rounds have been deleted, have been cancelled by the Danish authorities for the resurgence of the coronavirus in Europe. The second wave of the coronavirus of COVID-19 is really proving to be challenging again in Europe in the past couple of weeks. The Danish Formula 4, both rounds, the final rounds at Gillesringen have been cancelled, but luckily, it's news from yesterday actually, the Danish Formula 4 Championship will get the opportunity to round out its season in Sweden at the Sturup Raceway next weekend. So in Sweden, from the beginning, has been one of the countries with fewer limitations or restrictions. So it's going to be interesting to see the Formula 4 cars going around at Sturup Raceway, which is a track which honestly I do not know. Quite a small track, not one of the major tracks in Sweden, but good enough for Formula 4 cars, it looks. And with Juju Noda racing there, we mentioned her previously in the FIA Women in Motorsports program. She will be making the cut into the second stage, and she will round out her season in Danish Formula 4 next weekend in Sweden. She had a very interesting, it was of course her first season in Formula Car. She's 14-year-old, and she opted for the Danish Formula 4 because it was the only Formula 4 championship that allowed 14 years old in Europe. So she in the first race, straight in the first race, she got a pole position and a race victory. So far, it's been her only race victory. She had more podium, more pole positions, but she could not again get that win. She will try to get that into the final 3 races at Sturup Raceway next weekend. There's also another very important race coming up, which is TCR Europe.
Yeah, TCR Europe, and they're gonna be going to Spa, Belgium, the Frankenstein circuit. Of course, that is very known for air route and all the big corners that Formula One goes there during the Belgium Grand Prix. And of course, Michelle Haller, Jessica Bachmann, both of them are going to be racing there. It's going to be really interesting to see these vehicles driving around this circuit, especially depending on how the weather looks. It's going to be a very entertaining race, and definitely wishing both of them the best of luck. Of course, Michelle Haller, rookie season, already has a win. This is the second from last event for TCR Europe currently planned right now. Michelle is 10th in the point standings. Of course, that win was a big help for her. A little bit of sometimes inconsistency here and there. Jessica, she's currently 16th in the point standing. Both of them, of course, are very much excited about this race weekend. Of course, with all the women we talk about, you can see their Instagram or Twitter handles on the screen. So definitely encourage everyone to follow them, support them. And especially, I know Michelle has been posting a lot on Instagram as they're traveling to Belgium for the Frankenstein circuit race. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we encourage everyone, visit Racers, the girls behind the helmet, on the calendar page. You can find a full listing of all the women racing this upcoming weekend, including the ones we haven't had the time to mention. But definitely follow them. Be sure to like and subscribe to the Grid Network. Don't miss any of our programs. We'll see you next time. For Daniel at Racers, the girls behind the helmet, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.